All right, so we're
Got several of
back
these.
with another week, and unfortunately, again, we are missing Steve. So, it is what it is.
He's buried under a desk of bullshit.
So it seems. And speaking of desks of bullshit,
Ours is covered too.
yeah, the whole world. Although, comparatively, it's less. Well, it's been kind of a not
It's a
worse
mild
two
week.
weeks. The last 2 weeks have basically been like not worse than the weeks prior. They were just kind of on par or maybe slightly less bad, which, in context is pretty good. In the grand scheme of things is not really. But it is what it is.
Yep.
Oh, the world, as we were saying before we started, is all so very tiresome.
Yes, it is. So there's Newsmax bending the knee,
Yeah,
um,
which
and
they just did,
yeah,
basically involving the Dominion case. They've said they've apologized for their coverage, which is
they
probably all that was
settled
really
and
required.
apologized. So the terms of the settlement, I haven't bothered to look to see if there are any terms that have been published, but my guess is that they're going to be private, just to maintain the plausible possibility for both parties that they got something good out of it. So maybe Dominion plausibly but deniably ended up getting money out of it, or just the apology would probably be what Newsmax would hint at. But my guess is that there's a non-disclosure tied into that too.
Oh, it's almost
If it's
undoubtedly.
not public, if it's public, then you're gonna get everything. But I haven't seen anything, and I haven't really looked that hard though.
I can't see
So
Dominion letting any of
pinch
that
of
come
salt
out
on
to the
my part.
public because I imagine they're basically just throwing out these billions and billions of dollar lawsuits at people to
So
just say, "Hey, listen, we can do this, but if we do, it's not going to go well if you lose."
so here's my guess on the balance, the calculus on Newsmax and Dominion. They're parts of this. So for Newsmax, my guess is that they didn't have much in the way of original source material that would make a case for them, and it was probably way cheaper to accept a short-term loss in viewership, given the relatively small size of their audience as it is, and the potential for growth. Um, just to bite the bullet now and then come out looking like an underdog later.
Well, not only that, we can also take into account their little bit of mask off moment earlier in the
Sure.
election fraud coverage. So, we can just kind of take this for what it is, where Fox has basically fully taken off their mask and said, listen, we just want to be the next CNN, which at this point isn't all that hard.
Well, all you have to do is get an airport contract.
Yeah, yeah, and CNN's actually dropping them. So, you very well might start seeing Fox News
Oh man, just
in airports
Fox
soon.
News at Atlanta Airport would make my fucking day.
Oh,
I mean,
that
it
would
would be just as shit in my opinion, but it would be hilarious
the
too.
absolutely delicious irony of that. I don't know if I could even handle it.
Just could you imagine just walking down B terminal, seeing Tucker's fucking face? Oh man, I'm sorry. Keisha Lance Bombs is such a bitch, so like it's just really funny to me.
It's it would really be. I don't know if anyone could really appreciate that level of irony for it to actually be Fox News in the Atlanta airport. I mean,
Yeah.
that would be such a fine thing. God, I don't. I mean, I think they would probably buy out the contracts again just to stop them from getting in there.
Maybe we'll see.
At least in
It
Atlanta.
might be MSNBC that takes him up.
Oh, but then
So
again, they actually wrapped up that whole division, didn't they?
I don't know,
I think they did.
or maybe ABC or one of those other chicken noodle news networks.
Now, we had some other things too we were going to talk about that we're
Hmm.
actually discussing just before this. So let me get my links together
Oh,
here.
there was also Ether
Oh
at
yeah,
least
we
one
were wanting to
exchange
stop out with
charging
that.
three
Yeah.
grand.
So it is doing gangbusters.
So let me go check out. the Coinbase Pro um, value here. Blah 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 Ether. All right, right now it's at 30.24, 30.25. It's booming. Ether is the place to be at the moment. Although I will say this: if you're trying to move your Ether anywhere, it's probably a real pain in the ass right now. Actually, do I have it up? Because I can probably check the transaction cost right now. Let's see the Ether scans. Holy shit! Never mind. Well, it's probably still expensive, generally speaking. Well, it's not. It's 22 Gwei is the low, and 32 is the high. It was like 100 and something not that long ago. And keep in mind, the price was still above $2,000 at that point, so it's not like it was in proportion lower. It's anywhere between a $1.40 and $2 right now, roughly, to do a single, say, a unidirectional transaction. As a rough estimate. So like $2 for 30 seconds, $1.40 for 15 minutes is the estimates on Etherscan. This is their gas tracker. I'll get you a link.
Okay. Yeah, I'll put that in.
Blah blah show ideas. Here you go. So a swap as recent as like a week and a half ago, no, a week ago, a swap was still easily in like the mid 50s, like $50 ish.
Oh wow! So that's down significantly.
No, for a swap, not for a direct transfer. So a swap involves several transfers in the middle. So if you're like on Uniswap or on any of those, like other those, let's say Uniswap, there's there's a handful of other ones. Anyway, the point is, if you're doing swaps, it was really expensive not that long ago. If I guess it's gonna want my password right away. No, I'm not logged in on that. Let me chuck in password here in a second. I can just check a basic swap here in a second. Just check the gas cost. Blah 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 blah. This thing, and clicky, and copy, and pasty, and there it goes. Okay, so say I have this much stuff, and I want to swap for, I don't know, link, because reasons. And I want to swap 0.1 review. So now it's going to go through. I'm using an automated swap checker thing, so it's checking the different places to see what's the best one. Okay, really don't care about all that stuff. What I do care about, however, is the max network fee. So the max network fee right now is $25 on this swap. So the best price, the best bang for buck's what you get out of this thing. So that's gonna be at the kind of mid-range price. If I go and I check, so I click edit. So this is on fast. So at fast, it's a $25 swap. But for average, it's a $21 swap. These are easily 2/5 the price that it was less than 10 days ago.
Oh wow! Okay.
So, and this is with an increased price of the base asset. Just for context there. So, for a constant gas price, if the price of the asset goes up, you should have an increased transaction cost. Because the gas cost is based on the asset, not the dollar value. So, the fact that the network is bearing this kind of load right now, with this kind of transaction volume, while also having such low gas prices, is actually kind of nuts. So it's doing very, very well right now.
So I guess it's uniquely placed to do particularly well with that going on there, right?
Yeah. And so this is a great time to actually just swap, regardless of how well the base cost of the Ether chain is doing. The assets on top of it are doing pretty well too. So you actually asked me before we got on like the difference or like what was going on, like because it's not really a fork, but it's also a fork for the changeover to F2. And I think we might have covered this before, but just like
Yeah,
in
we
brief
actually
here.
did go over that
Okay.
pretty in depth.
Yeah, so just in brief here, F2 as a main chain is going to have the ability to create side chains called shards. All of it's based off of proof of stake, not proof of work. So of dramatic reduction in the energy cost as well as the computational cost, but a slight increase in the dollar value risk if you're maintaining a full node and you're acting as one of these staker nodes. So the people who are actually doing the transactions are the stakers, and they make their money basically on uptime and maintaining the stake in the network. So if you don't maintain your uptime and continue to transact these new blocks, you get penalized, you get slashed, and so you lose the overhead profit that comes out of that, which includes the block reward. So you have to get like damn near perfect uptime as the goal as a staker node. So anyway, Ethereum, the main chain besides F2, so the precursor, the one that everyone's excited about right now, it's now down to 3021, but it's still above 3,000. It's still nuts. So Ethereum is right now proof of work. So you do the hashes, you expend a lot of computational power.
As people would understand, basically
Right.
any cryptocurrency that pretty much exists as of right now.
So it's mined in a similar fashion to, skipping over some details, in a similar fashion to Bitcoin, as it stands right now.
Yeah, to
When it
put
becomes
it roughly.
when it becomes a shard chain on F2, it will become mined by proof of stake instead of proof of work. So much lower costs all around. The process for making that happen is kind of underway right now. F2 is mainnet at this point. Stakers have kind of filed in. It's still reaching capacity. The eventual transition to F2 is going to involve turning the Ethereum chain into a shard chain on F2's backbone. So it'll become a new branch off of F2. Now that is going to be like a hard fork. I mean, in practical outcome, it's going to be a hard fork, but it's largely going to be able to be mediated by contract underlying the entire thing. So the smart contract basis of the whole entire Ethereum chain is going to be a very powerful mechanism for kind of just easing everything over without much difficulty. What that will leave, however, is the Ethereum chain as it was before, available to fork at that point. And it depends largely on whether or not people just en masse migrate over and abandon it, which is not likely, or they just continue mining it with proof of work, which is likely, but it's not likely that it's going to be in quite the same fashion. So the same way that Ethereum Classic came out of a hard fork from before, Ethereum 1, or F1, or F as it is right now, will likely continue on, just at a much lower usage. So you might get split coins out of it. You never know. It might be that everything moves over by contract and it's just kind of killed off by contract too. It's still kind of up in the air as to how everything's going to be completed, but you can go and check out the Ethereum Foundation's white papers on this. They're still kind of confused, in my opinion, as well.
Interesting.
But yeah, like every other main protocol shift has basically availed a hard fork, with basically a reduced coin price on the altcoin. So that's still likely to happen here. It's just that there's, how that is managed is going to be interesting to watch.
Something we'll just have to watch that play out.
Yeah, but that should probably be happening this year. So that'd be really cool.
And
a little over half of this year left to see that happen. It'd probably make a lot of people real happy to get the extra coin, the extra cash out of it.
Well, also, people very unhappy to see this was at the 2021 Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting. they were very very unhappy about this. Actually, his specific words were, "I hate the Bitcoin success. The
Fuck
whole
them.
damn development is disgusting and contrary to the interests of civilization," says American billionaire investor Munger.
You know what?
And I'll have a link for that so everybody can check that out. It was
He
put up
can.
by disclose.tv. It's it's beautiful.
He
It
can. He
warms your
can.
heart and makes you want to buy Bitcoin.
He can kiss the wettest part of my circumcised dick.
But to oh, and of course drinking
God
a
damn, man.
disgusting Diet Coke like some sort of monstrous plebeian. Unbelievable. So tactless.
God, what an absolute prick. I don't like it.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Cry harder.
yeah, if you ever wanted another reason to get into crypto, to make them cry harder, why
Yeah, well,
not?
I mean, they're all late because none of them thought. Look, basically the entirety of legacy finance was basically acted like what the fuck's his name? The economist, the Nobel Prize winner. Uh, God damn, the one who said he got threatened with the child porn thing on Twitter.
Oh,
I
damn
just
it!
tip of the tongue there for everybody.
I
I'm sorry.
cannot remember offhand.
Anyway, that asshole. Um, he was wrong about the internet in the same way that basically the entirety of the finance world was wrong about Bitcoin. He said the internet won't amount to much, no more than a pager or a phone,
Womp womp.
an oddity.
Oh, I remember that very speech.
Yeah, that asshole who he got a Nobel Prize, and then he proceeded to be stunningly and embarrassingly wrong in a consistent manner about everything else in his life, ever, which is it's hilarious.
Oh,
So
so kind of just spirals.
yeah, so everyone else in the industry is basically that wrong about Bitcoin, and they've realized it now. They can't keep up with the who they would call the retail consumers when it comes to stock exchanges. So if you're not in a big company, a hedge fund doing stuff, then you're a retail consumer. Just that's how it works. They're upset because the little guy is blowing them out in terms of the volume capacity on these networks, these different coins. And the funny thing is, every time they come in and try to manipulate shit, everybody can just shift over to another coin and leave it behind to die. And all they're stuck with is a bunch of digital assets that aren't worth anything because nobody wants it.
Well, yeah, I mean, we can also look at kind of the whole thing
Like
that happened with Wall Street.
They try these pump and dumps in the background, and they don't work. Why? Because nobody wants their shit coins. Like everybody will pile in and have fun, and they think they're going to be able to launch out a new coin, and it just treats like a pump and dump and bails out early on them, and they're left with a whole bunch of nothing. But they have to compute, otherwise it's not. Otherwise the chain dies. So eventually
so they throw a
have
bunch
to
of
abandon
resources
their
at nothing, basically, and then have to deprecate the whole thing, I guess.
Yeah, they end up just having to abandon it because nobody wants to run a node for them because everyone knows what the fuck it is. So they've turned over to doing. So Ethereum is great for this because, and from their perspective, I would say, because you don't have to have your own nodes to run an altcoin on Ethereum. You just have to make a smart contract and pay for it the once. Like I've made two different coins of my own. Let's see what I have Tard shards and Chan coins, which are equally stupid. And it's just because you make a smart contract, you make the coins, and then you got them. Ta-da. Easy.
Oh.
I mean, they're not worth anything unless someone wants to give me ether for them, which nobody in their right mind would do. Just to be clear, like if anybody ever wanted them, I would laugh and give them over. But nobody in their right mind would want these things because they're just pointless.
Well,
so again,
your
don't
description
offer me
there
anything
kind of
for them.
says to me that you can just make any amount more of them that you should ever want, right?
Well, no, that's the thing is it's not that you can make more of them because a smart contract you have to put in so you can make a smart contract where you can make an infinite supply, but you can't make an infinite supply at the get-go. You have to have a maximum number of coins available in the in the contract that you make. So in the basic schematic for one of these altcoins you build on top of it as an asset, you have to have some maximum. But you can also build in functions for generating coins and destroying coins. So you can burn coins and you can print them. So if, for instance, you just decide that arbitrarily a tenth of all coins at some given date are burned, and then you generate the new tenth for yourself, you can potentially generate an infinite supply of coins for yourself.
Oh, okay. So this is one of those kind of systems.
So like you can build it in, but here's the other thing: everybody can see your smart contract. They can see whether or not you've done that.
So nobody reasonably would.
And there's no post facto update. It's not like, oh, I'll change it later. There's the contract exists and it's a one and done deal. So if you want to modify it after the fact, you got to make a new one.
Okay.
So it's very straightforward. It is a what you see is what you get kind of thing.
Well, that's good. I imagine that's another reason why the oligarchs and banking types
they hate that.
Really don't like it.
They hate that part. So what you see on Ether with these smart contract based altcoins is you'll see a lot of these pump and dumps that are run, a lot of cheap shit ICOs that are generated entirely to get you to dump your money in early, and sometimes they're preyed upon by outside venues, and oftentimes what you'll see, especially because a lot of quote retail capacity persons will do the same. You'll see at the very beginning, and once the ICO completes, a big ramp up in price, and then you'll see it nosedive. And then if it actually is going to be a successful product, it'll slowly climb back up. So Ethereum itself, as a coin, being kind of the third big one, well, fourth big one that really came out. So Bitcoin, Litecoin, Feathercoin. I'll skip over a handful of others, and then Ethereum. And Ethereum's kind of the big one after Litecoin that really pushed a novel innovation that caught on big. So the smart contract thing. So yeah, but anyway, so you see this, like, because it's so cheap, relatively speaking, to make new coins, and because you already have the network capacity, etc. Ethereum's seen a lot of this kind of abuse where they've done these pump and dumps to try and scam people in a way that is not currently regulated by the SEC, and most people are wary.
Basically, just kind of predators at the margins, then.
Right. So, but you see, this is also done by a lot of other smaller entities. It's not like Wall Street's the main perpetrator here. They're a small fish in the pool. So this is done a lot by a lot of bigger fish out there. A lot of the whales that hoard coins will also do this, and they'll sometimes be the primary input and output of a pump and dump, and just catch up a small margin on the bottom end of it, of people who got sucked in on what was it, Gold Talk forums.
Oh yeah, I was about to say that's kind of like how some of the commodities trading fuckery will go, right?
Yeah, you show up on these forums, and people are sitting there hyping shit over and over and over again. Enough suckers will go and buy in, and then they'll go ahead and divest themselves entirely, and leave them holding. So,
which kind of happened with GameStop, but also not really.
Well, that's the thing is,
just a quick update on that. GameStop sitting at $173.59 as of the weekend's trading.
That is a cool, $20 increase?
Yeah,
roughly?
It's doing great, and I'll tell you what, my Nokia, it's at $4.68 right now, which is just really solid, steady growth.
That's happening. No, I've just love that GameStop's never going to touch $10 again. Never going to get even close. It's never happening.
No, and it seems like they've got a really responsible board on hand that's going to be making use of this capital.
They have the capital injection that allows them to turn around as a company. Like, if they turn into a place that is not the fucking joke of the early 2000s that it was, like, if it becomes, if you get to walk in there and, like, sit in a lounge chair and shit, I'm just going to die laughing at the end of my life if I see that company continue on and turn into, like, a luxury experience for gamers.
I'm very curious to see what they do with this.
That'd be so funny.
With this, I mean, I know they're going to be doing something new and interesting, and there really isn't even any rumblings of what it is to be yet. I guess unless you're in that industry, and I haven't heard word one.
Hmm.
But I'll tell you what.
Ether cracked 3030 a while back. It's just a hair under right now, but I'm sure it'll go right back over that. That's small potatoes at this point for the difference. Well, I expect it's going to hit a firm 5% increase at some point here soon. Not like tonight, but like sometime mid-morning tomorrow-ish, probably.
Yeah, so, and that being said, too, now is a very good time to get into Bitcoin because, well, not specifically Bitcoin, to get into crypto, I should say.
Yeah,
because
in general.
The Fed is basically kind of telegraphing that in the next coming months they're going to start fucking things up, so you really need to get your money into...
They haven't stopped fucking things up since early 2020. I want to make that clear right now.
Okay, but it looks like they're going to be shifting gears.
Doubled M0 last year. Which is huge. It's fucking gigantic. And they have not stopped since then. The slope is no longer a vertical line, but it is definitely still a high positive slope.
Yeah, this is, and we're not even looking at a plateau
now, I think.
At all.
Let me go find another picture for that, because like, let's see, M0 2021. See if anything interesting comes out of that. So money supply, blah blah. Somebody give me a decent graph. Okay, so April of 2020, it was at 4.84 units, millions of US dollars. Okay, whatever. So 4.84 whatever. March 21st, it is 5.84. So this is M0 history. If you go back even further on that, so this is the last 12 readings, the last 24 readings. So let me just give you an idea of the fuckery that's been going on here. February 20th, or February of 2020, 3.45 M. March 21st, oh, god damn it, this thing's fucking me up. February 2020, 3.45. March 2021, 5.84. That's double. That's bad.
Yeah, that's pretty substantial.
It went down, so it peaked in May last year, 5.15. Bottomed out in July of last year at 4.7. So they retracted they took some of the money off the sheet. But then it's been steady growth since then. Every single month's been an increase. Now, it's typical for the M0 to increase slightly year to year, just by inflation. So these are the dollars, these are the dollars that never go away in the fractional reserve system. These are the basis dollars that make all other debt dollars. So the debt dollars come from a bank taking in $1 and loaning out 10.
So I guess you could say these are those initial,
yeah,
these initial
$1
fiat
that
dollars.
goes in. So, yeah. So these dollars make many, many more dollars, which is why you're seeing an explosion in the price of all kinds of markets right now, because that capital that has been injected is looking for somewhere to settle in, and thankfully crypto's absorbed a decent-sized chunk of it. But that's also not stopping anytime soon. Like this, the impact of this step change from last year, that gigantic growth they just put in, that's not going to be finished being felt for like a decade.
No, it would have to be rolled back. And even
we're going to be a couple presidents later before we actually get to the end of just what happened this year. What's going to be happening in the next couple years, from what it looks like their growth is continuing as, is going to be worse. Like if the markets can't absorb as much as they're absorbing, like if they get to a saturation point, we might see something like hyperinflation.
I was about to say that. I mean, it gets thrown around a lot today in a lot of media, but I mean, that's actually a very real possibility. We could be looking at
if we manage
to
fuck this up,
ridiculously little value.
So like I'm not like a person who says go out there and hoard assets and so on, but like hoard assets at this point with
Yeah,
the way that
yeah.
they're doing shit
Have
with the
have
dollar.
some. Definitely have some. And make sure
Diversify
that
your
the things
portfolio
you
efficiently.
in make sure the things that you're invested in are stable long term because
Yeah, well,
there's a
or
very
just
real
have things that
possibility of a
matter.
crash.
Just have assets that are useful, not just in general, but also to you. Like and I'm not saying to go out and buy more than one car, but like a car is an asset. If you've been waiting to buy a new car, like this might be a reasonable time to do it before the prices jump
Yeah,
again. So when inflation is ramping up, the prices lag behind it, but not by far. Prices of commodities. So as long as it's ramping up, getting a commodity now kind of ensures you're going to have a better kind of you get ahead of the curve a little bit
yeah. So
for
this
the
is
prices.
this is kind of your warning. So if there's something you are wanting to do and you've been putting it off,
You know,
don't.
not a
Now is
financial
that time.
not a financial advisor here, but like you can see this shit plain as day. Any layperson can.
Yeah, so now is the time. If you need a new car and you were kind of putting it off, but you've got the money, but you were maybe wanting to do something else with it, maybe go ahead and get that car.
Yeah. And I'm not like also. This is also not like a buy shit to defeat the terrorists kind of thing. Like this is
No,
they're
like
fucking up. They're fucking the dollar up actively right now.
yeah,
Other things are looking way better because of it. So stocks going through the roof recently. They keep talking about how billionaires are making so much money. They're making money off of their stocks going up and getting a dividend that is becoming worth less every time it gets printed out to them.
yeah. I mean, when
So
you're becoming more and more wealthy,
in dollars.
but the value of the dollar is that much less. I mean,
So
yeah, you can attach a
don't get
larger
the difference.
number. Well,
Price and
it's like
value
looking at
are so different.
yeah, it's like looking at yen prices. It's like, wow, this is crazy, but then you realize that yen is basically pennies.
Well, it's a crazy thing. So like people are already seeing it in the price of stuff. It's not like the gas price is not tied in the same way.
Yeah, it's kind of artificially set right now.
So the gas price going up the way it did is not even like it's partly driven by this. I wouldn't say it would go up by like 50%, but it should have gone up like an appreciable amount. Like a 20% rise in gas price was almost unavoidable after last year. Well, especially after the way that the global gas oil market got totally fucked up by the pandemic. But like as it's stabilizing out now, we should have expected some increase due to inflation, but it's largely regulated as a cost, so it's not going to be a major shift in the same way. But like $3 a gallon, $4 a gallon coming in at some point.
Yeah, that's pretty much unavoidable. We have an
That's
administration now that's been installed that wants nothing to do with
yeah.
fossil fuels
He, he fucked that up so hard and so fast.
and
But
want nothing to do with nuclear because that
yeah,
would
because
also solve the
hippies.
problem.
Yeah, it would solve the problem and fucking fix things.
Yeah, and we can't really do that. That would be anathema
That's
to
what
the cause.
Republicans are for. Oh wait, they fuck it up too.
Yeah, kind of. There's a lot of rhinos and a lot of neolibs.
Well, I'll say this: like attributing only the positive aspects of the Republican Party to some true Scotsman never is going to solve the major problems in it.
No,
I
but
mean,
Caitlyn Jenner's getting a lot of backing, so
oh
you
my
know.
god, that's going to be so funny. My favorite part is the tranny comes out and says, "Don't put him into sports." And what
Oh
happens?
yes, yes.
Oh,
If
that's not right. You're not supposed to say that.
yeah,
You're a transphobic tranny.
if you haven't heard, Caitlyn Jenner did come out and supported trans bans on youth sports.
I'm sorry. That's an insensitive way of referring to people.
Well, I have to say I support it entirely and think it is both hilarious and appropriate.
Well, it's just God, now like as soon as that happened, all the people who were just like, "Oh my God, everybody should be so happy that this brave man who is better at being a woman than all women this year is such a fantastic, brave, stunning woman," and then, "Oh, I'm gonna run as a Republican." Didn't you hear about how they crashed their car?
Yeah. Well,
Oh my God. It's
there was
instantly
somebody.
back
Was
to
it
that. Like,
somebody
that
on The
was the
View?
funniest thing. Was it rubber banded back to that point?
Oh yeah. You can kind of watch the cognitive dissonance just fall away from them
Oh my God.
as the blinders just fall right into place,
Hmm.
and they can't
It's a
even.
Republican now. It's okay to bash them and call them every word you were previously upset at anyone else saying.
And you'd expect these people to, what would you say, to have some sort of consistency or something, but the only consistency they have is inconsistency, and the only
Well, if they
standards they
didn't
have are double
have
standards.
if they didn't have double standards, they wouldn't have any standards at all.
That is a fact, Jack.
And this has been your cliche catchphrase half hour.
Yeah, absolutely. So there have been
No,
some
it's funny. It
updates.
gets used so much that like at this point that is it's like vote Democrat and vote often. Or sorry, was it the Democrat credo is to vote and vote often.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And get out the vote, get out to your local cemetery, all that. I mean,
Yeah.
everyone deserves a right to vote, Civil War veterans included.
Yeah.
I mean, we support our vets.
All right. So there was this thing so you remember going through the briefing for the FDA that Pfizer put together to get their EUA.
Yeah, yeah, okay, yeah.
And you remember going through that as a slog.
Yeah, there was a ridiculous amount of incredibly dry text.
Right. So that was what 40 odd pages, right?
48,
Okay.
maybe?
This is 146 pages
Oh, good God.
that we are not going through.
Oh, good. Well, I'll put it up so that if anybody wants to, they can. So you want to give us
Well,
a brief on it?
here's the important thing. This is the protocol for a trial. This is not the trial results or data, has no knowledge of the results a priori. All this is a protocol for a trial.
Okay.
So, the thing that I caught wind of on Ztwatters that I then read a forum post on, which I'm struggling to I don't I want to link it, but I also don't want to spread the misinfo that's on here. So I'm gonna link it. I'm gonna give it to you anyway. I'll leave it at your discretion. It's your show. But like this forum post is bad. So
I'll give us a TLDR then.
So here's what's going on here is it's a protocol. It's designed to be overly broad. At this point, they're doing trials. They do not know.
Let me stop you for a quick second, because what I'm reading here, I think I may have had this discussed in another group I'm in. Is this the vaccine shedding issue?
So that's what they're trying to go with here, and it's just false.
Okay, I'd love for you to go into this, actually, because I was having a discussion about this with some other folks, and I have no standing to go on that. So please, continue.
As I was saying, that document is a protocol. That is the instructions. It's the procedure they follow. That's it. It's before the experiment. So the basis of the breadth of concern inside that document is that they do not know. They have a great idea of what is supposed to happen beforehand. They have no idea how it's actually going to go until they've done the experiment.
So we could say then that this is basically just a potential concern of the experiment, and
but it's already been done.
The results
the
of the experiment.
Experiment was done. We went over the data from the experiment.
Oh, that was what we went over. Okay, I don't remember us going over
we went
this
over the
topic
experiment
specifically. But
Yeah, this is the protocol that came out, that was designed and that was done. This is the protocol that existed prior to that experiment.
okay, to get the data that we went over previously. Gotcha.
Exactly.
Okay.
So
Now I remember we didn't go over this specifically, but I know you did actually read through all of that shit.
So we talked about adverse events, and we talked about severe adverse events. We
but I
talked about what
also,
an adverse event means.
in remembering that we didn't go over this, that brings to mind that this would have been a very poignant issue, and I'm sure you would have brought it up, that
Oh yeah,
vaccine
this would have been
shedding
something
is a,
huge.
because that's actually a not normal event.
Well, here's the thing: so transmission would not have been a measured thing, and here's the thing: it's theoretically, in the broadest sense of the word, possible that there is transmission. What it is, where it is not shown, is in the data. Period. So far. Now, the thing that they think should happen, and what I would say does happen, as a practical concern, is the RNA is lipid encapsulated. It is endocytosed, so that it is enveloped by the outside of a cell and eaten effectively. It comes in as an endocytosed region. The vacuole is opened up because it's lipid, and the cell eats it. The mRNA is released inside the cell. That happens very quickly. The mRNA never leaves the cell again. It does its job. It will either show up at the ribosome and generate the protein, the S protein, which then goes into the protein folding complex, which turns it into the actual S protein, the spike. That has a stabilized raft, sent out into the cell, which is then ejected into the bloodstream, just as waste, because free-roaming proteins like that are just ejected. So that kind of stuff is normally going to be like cleaned up by the liver or the kidneys, or basically it comes out your colon or it comes out in your urine. In any event, the mRNA will never leave the cell again. Effectively, it's stuck there. It's either going to be used by the ribosome, or it's going to degrade and fall apart and be recycled. Be broken down into bits and reused, or just removed as cellular waste. So, one way or another, the mRNA is coming out of you, not as mRNA. Now, there's a possibility that the mRNA might not be endocytosed immediately and come out some other fashion. We just don't know at that point. What we do know is that if a person wants to transmit that, it's going to have to basically be by fluid contact. So
zombies.
So the yeah, right.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that it's turning people into zombies, but I mean that would be
just that they're behaving like them. Their masks, their face shields, and
okay. Oh man, speaking of, there are people that are vaccinated now, and with the new mandates that came out over the last week about you don't need to mask up if you're outside. You didn't the whole fucking time, just by the by. But
if you're far enough away from people, you just don't fucking need it. Yeah.
But yeah, the CDC, which is garbage, but they've even come out now and said, hey, if you're outside,
well, they have a study now, obviously.
Well, a study that they
we'll get into that detail in a minute, because I have something else to say about another large organization that fucked up royally over a year ago.
Who could that be?
No. So basically a fluid contact exposure is going to be an exposure event. Now, exposures are going to be tracked because, again, they just don't know at this point in time before the study has been completed.
Right.
So we're way back at the beginning when they designed the protocol and they followed the protocol, and they had no idea what the outcome was going to be like. So all exposures are going to be considered OSHA level exposures for personnel. Basically, you're going to be treating it like a stick, so a needle stick. You're going to be put under monitoring, and basically become included in the trial to an extent. All of those are considered an adverse event. Now, if a woman is pregnant or becomes pregnant during the trial as a person who was vaccinated or unvaccinated or was given a placebo, mind you, either became pregnant during the trial as an active participant in the trial on either side of the placebo border, or they're with a man that got them pregnant who was a part of the trial. That is considered an exposure during pregnancy, an EDP. So, EDPs are all followed up, period. And any child abnormality, anything like that, that's considered an adverse event. All EDPs are not considered an adverse event directly, but are reported using the severe adverse event form.
And just
So,
as a point of
if you look
note,
at
was
the
it not the
filings of severe adverse events, then all EDPs are going to be filed as an SAE, even though they are not included as an SAE in the final tabulation.
just as a point of note on that, wasn't it the is it the Moderna that we're hearing the problems about just now, or was it the
So we're not.
Pfizer?
It's
The
it'd
Johnson and
probably be
Johnson.
Moderna, but so it's just nothing like there's hearsay, a lot of hearsay. The problem is that there hasn't been enough basically complaints to official sources to establish a need for a study. So until that happens, it's all hearsay. And the worst part is, it doesn't matter how much I trust someone who says that their cousin or their friend's friend had some issue, until there's documented proof in front of me. They went and saw a doctor and they had a scan of some kind. Until I see documented proof, I'm not gonna fucking believe it, because there's been so much of that horseshit in the last year.
Yeah, well, that's
It's
a fair
so
point.
much of it. So much of it. I feel terrible about it, because I really want to believe people, but it's just to the point where normally I'll give people the benefit of the doubt. The scientist in me says anecdotal's worth shit, but hear them out. At this point, though, you got to show me proof, and I'm not going to ask someone for their fucking their stuff that's between them and the doctor. You don't ask that. That's between them and their doctor, and if they have that problem, their doctor has a lawful duty to report that in the first place. So it will go to an official source and stimulate the same kind of issue as we had with Johnson and Johnson, if that's actually a thing.
Theoretically, anyway.
And the doctor doesn't report to Moderna or to Pfizer or to J&J. They report to the federal government. They tell the CDC and the FDA. They don't tell anybody else. The CDC and the FDA then tell the companies. So it's not like they can hide this if it's a real problem that people are going to see doctors for. So
Well,
if it is a real problem that people are going to see doctors for, it'll go through the same exact kind of, if it's a sufficient amount of people that have an issue, you'll see a red flag go up. You'll see the same kind of thing that happened with Johnson and Johnson. There's going to be some sort of pause. People will do a study and look at it. They'll have a meeting on it, and they'll decide whether or not to continue the vaccine.
now that
With or
having
without
been said,
caveats.
it does appear that there's less less concern over the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines in that
There
regard
is.
than there would be regarding the Janssen vaccine,
So,
which I find legitimately peculiar.
well, I find it to be legitimately sad, because a lot of people have reservations with the new tech, and I don't blame them. In 50 years, once it's tried and true and proven, I will be able to say, you're a Luddite, shut up. But it is new as of last year. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
really, I don't blame people. It's the same way when cell phones first came out. There are only certain people that were using them. There's always going to be the early adopters. Some people got a shitty cell phone. Some people might end up with a bad vaccine. This could be bad, right? Fine. I'm
Well,
willing
I
to
mean,
accept
we look
that.
at
This is just also happens to be. These also happen to be the most tested vaccines to date at their stage in development
well,
ever.
yeah.
Period.
Ironically enough, yes.
It's the same way that we could probably say that SARS-2 and COVID is basically the most studied disease at this point. It's so well characterized.
Yeah,
in literature.
If things over the end of the year and the beginning of this one had not been so utterly overturned, we would be looking at a very bright 2021.
So again, just to get back to this post and the concerns you had, so anybody who's had an EDP is basically automatically by you could say force majeure or just by circumstance now in the study. They get follow-ups. They are asked, how they're feeling, all the other shit. They basically get reported on in the data. So they are included in the participant population. Now, the concern here is, can transmission happen, or are there just events that are associated? So it couldn't be. It could even be that just by the fact that they're sleeping with this guy, say they get pelvic bruising because they happen to have a particularly rough partner. That is an adverse event. So it's not because they got the vaccine transmitted to them that they had pelvic bruising. It's because they were having very rough sex that they got pelvic bruising. So the fact of the matter is that would still be a correlation you could draw. This person had the vaccine, this person didn't, they were in the same place, this person came out with pelvic bruising, this person didn't. Or say they both get pelvic bruising. They both got pelvic bruising, only one of them got vaccinated. What's going on there? Well, this other explanation that is part of the synthesized case here is the reasoning. It is the reason. So you have to have all the data presented at once in order to get the complete picture. So this is the way of getting that data. You have to get all the information about all the people who have had potential fluid contact that would potentially transmit the mRNA. So if you looked at the data in what we were looking at months ago now, none of that was there. There is no transmission that was observed.
So I guess
via adverse event. There was no correlation of adverse events that would suggest transmission.
So to basically put a pin on it, it's not really a thing. It's basically thought of as a potential issue to be brought up during testing, but upon...
You've got to be very broad with this kind of stuff. They do the same kind of thing with testing out like new formulations of Advil. All right. So like you've got to be this broad when you're talking about things that can be transmitted via body fluids, potentially at some place in the body. Your entire body's made out of cells. Save small bits of you like your fingernails and your hair. Even your bones, the osseous layers of your bones, like it's all cells in there too. You have bone structure, but you have cells maintaining it. So just about every single bit of you is made of cells that have DNA in them, and if the mRNA is going to take up residence in any part of your body, say the mRNA got into sperm cells, that is an obvious transmission vector. Right?
Fair, yeah.
I think at that point, especially like the whole ACE2 thing, I think it not even like even though that's a kind of that's not a path it would be able to take to get in because that involves the S protein, not the mRNA. Like just considering that the mRNA could show up potentially anywhere in the human body once you get an injection, it was a reasonable thing to include in the documentation that if you have a fluid transfer event and it results in a pregnancy or it's during a pregnancy, what have you, there's the potential for transmission of the mRNA somehow, somewhere. They should monitor for it. It's straightforward.
But that being said, it would appear that this was not a concern at the end of the day.
It's at the end, no, not a concern.
So that said,
anyone... if you ejaculate into your partner, it's possible within the first couple weeks after you get an injection that you could transmit a couple strands. Just to be clear on that. Really? And it would be inside the spermatozoa. It would not be in the semen itself. Like it would be in the actual sperm cells.
So it would require a real kind of perfect storm of events, but theoretically,
unless you are also bleeding down there, and even then, your red blood cells don't have a nucleus, so they also don't really. I mean, they endocytose things, but like not the same way.
So
like it'd be a very small fraction of things that could possibly transfer mRNA after, like say after the first 30 or 40 minutes, you could say that the lipid encapsulated mRNA has basically been taken up into your cells.
Well, we had a discussion in another group I'm in about this. actually, and I will be happy to share the news with them because she was very, the lady I was talking to was very
Yes, they're
concerned about
freaked out.
seeing her friends because they had all gotten the vaccine,
Yeah, so
and she
there's no
is
way that it's
very
airborne.
curious
It's
about
not coming out through the skin. You know,
it. Okay,
it's that.
well, so let
A
your
lot of
concerns
periods, for
be
example.
assuaged.
Here's another thing: is there's a lot of other things that can cause significant issues with, say, menstruation that people are going to be looking over because they have an easier target in mind that fits in better with the narrative they're telling themselves in their head. And I don't want to just tell people it's all in their head because sometimes things aren't in your head. You know, you should be skeptical of things, but you should also try to be rational about things and put them into perspective. You know, lightning only kills so many people a year, but I'm not going to go out swinging a metal golf club in the middle of an open field during a lightning storm, right?
Yeah, absolutely. As they say, don't invite disaster.
Right. So, but that said, if it's like a storm off in the distance, and I'm playing golf, I might finish my round before I go in. There's degrees of there's degrees of risk and risk tolerance that need to be considered here, and there's some perspective that needs to be put into place here. So stress alone can cause major changes in both the like the severity of a period, you know, severity of menstruation. It's like basically you can have a really heavy and crampy period just from being freaked the fuck out, and you can also end up skipping one just from being so stressed. So if you put yourself into the headspace where you are so freaked out about something, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, especially if you're so freaked out, for example, about being near someone who's vaccinated. That's
So,
a thing. And I'm not saying that's what's happening, but I'm saying that's also a possibility, and in my opinion, a much more likely possibility.
so that said, if you're, I guess the takeaway here is, if you're in a really freaked out state of mind,
You gotta calm down.
don't go to swinger parties with recently vaccinated people.
Sure. I mean, look,
And
you gotta
that's about it. That's about all you've got to worry about.
just. I mean, I know it's one of the worst things in the world to hear if you're someone who's having issues at the moment, but you gotta calm down. You gotta take a step back, take a breath, get some perspective on things. You know, it won't put you in the easiest state of mind, but the next time you go and see your GP, for example, if you have a good one, you can ask them about the vaccine and what they think about it, and try to get them to give you just a little bit of help understanding things, so that you're not you're not as stressed. Like just to get more information is even a place to start there. Just to have something that's like accessible to you and able to be read. Like I can tell you right now, reading one of these documents, it's not immediately accessible. Which is it's unfortunate, but it's just the way it is. It's not an immediately accessible thing to read through one of these protocols.
Yeah,
Because
they're
it looks
very
like they're
much
expecting
scientific
doom.
documents.
It looks like they're expecting doom and gloom to a certain degree because they have no idea what they're going to see. Like I said, they have an idea ahead of time, but they have to write the protocol as if they have zero idea. You know, it could be that you inject the vaccine and 3 days later a third arm grows out of the injection site. They just don't fucking know.
And that being said,
But they've done in vivo, they've done in vitro. You know, a phase 2 trial, they've gotten the phase 1 data already. So they know the phase 1 info. But if they don't have a large enough population, and they had a gigantic population for the phase 2, then, you know, they have to be wary that they might be potentially causing a major problem with over 40,000 people that they had in that trial.
And another takeaway from this, if you are concerned about it, get the Janssen vaccine. It's fine unless you're on a specific birth control. It's got incredibly low frequency of any problems, and the problems that do show up are basically related to hormone imbalances.
And
So,
here's the thing with the J&J, with the Janssen, the most important thing that it does well. It does it to basically the same effectiveness as Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, and that is a 100% reduction to date, to my knowledge, to date, 100% reduction in the hospitalizations and deaths associated with COVID. 100%. That
now,
is the reason right now to get it.
now what it
And
does is a little different than what the Pfizer and Moderna do, where those give you the protection against getting the infection and maybe don't protect you as much from having the bad sickness. This gives you maybe a 65%, I believe, percent protection against actually getting the virus. But should you get the virus, it basically just makes it like a regular coronavirus.
So at worst, it'll be like a bad cold. Some people, very few people, might still be at, and this is why I say to date on these, that stipulation there, by the way, because there's certain at-risk populations that are A, not going to be tested, period, and B, already have risk mitigation requirements that are, so if you're like in your 80s and you get the Janssen vaccine, you still really don't want to get sick because
a regular coronavirus could be very bad for you. Now the fact that
it could still be bad.
Yeah. So in that case, if you're, concerned or worried and you don't want to take the mRNA vaccine, which if you're older, honestly, I've heard one horror story from somebody I know, and we can't really say if it's directly related. It's just a weirdness.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'll say this: of the three of them, the one that still continues to have, in my opinion, the best safety profile, and not a medical professional here, just I know too many of them. In my opinion, the Pfizer vaccine still shows the best profile for safety. Only slightly better than Moderna, and both of them better than Janssen. If you're open to getting the mRNA vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine also only has a 3-week lag between doses, whereas Moderna requires 4. So if you're trying to get the vaccine and get that shit over with and just move on, if you're worried about that extra week and you're worried about safety issues, and if you have like severe concerns about that, but you're still, for whatever reason, in that state, still want to go with mRNA, Pfizer is basically the one to use. I can find that vaccine website again. I think it was Vaccine Locator or something. Vaccine Finder, that was it.
Yeah, I'll actually link that in chat for anybody. Not in chat. I'll link that in the thing below.
Yeah, so the most important thing about this is you can select buy the vaccine and then see who has the specific vaccine that you want. So if you want the Janssen vaccine, if you want Moderna, or if you want Pfizer, if you have a preference, you can make it automatically selects all 3 checkboxes when you get in there. You just have to uncheck the ones you don't want, and then put in your zip code or what have you, and then it'll find the places near you.
And
so
as I had said a few weeks ago, there was a actually no, it was at the beginning. Well, yeah, a few weeks ago, but at the beginning of last year, a new factory came online that was going to be making the Janssen vaccine. So if you were holding out for that one, if you were actually holding out for it and not just saying you were holding out for it so that you could fuck around, then it is generally going to be available in your area now. So just look on here and check for it.
It's no longer the Baltimore factory fucking it all up.
Yeah, and that being said, I am not surprised at how much fuckery has happened regarding this one and how much there is.
I could believe that everything. I could believe the trial went beautifully, and then Baltimore fucked it up. I could easily believe that, like just bad doses fucking people's lives over.
That is possible.
And my guess is that would be the last step in the chain people would check too. Just fuck me. Like after the the first is the printer on kind of checks. That'd be the last place to go in and do the detailed shit and be the factory that scaled it all up. Man.
Indeed.
Well, just because you saw the way that the red flags popped up about the Janssen vaccine. if there really is a preponderance and not just anecdotes of people either fucking around or trying to make a name for themselves to get grift done, or just adding in to be a participator, because that is a thing. See all of 4chan, for example.
Fair enough.
So as long as they're not LARPing, if there's real cases happening, the Janssen pause happened a few weeks after the problems actually happened. So it doesn't take that long for that to make its way up the chain. This is a pretty significant issue if it's a health issue, a public health issue, when it comes to millions of citizens. They get that shit done pretty quickly.
Yeah.
It's one of
Well,
those
it came
few
off to
things
me
that
as a
government
PR
does.
thing.
It's one of the few things that in this specific set of circumstances, the government's going to do more efficiently than private industry, especially with asses on the line for cover your ass issues. You might sign the document that says you're going to indemnify them, or they might have that in law in writing, but you can always take that shit to court. So they're not going to bank on that until the end. So I'm not saying that, for instance, when I talk about these vaccines, pharmaceutical companies have a horrendous track record with fucking over people that they have grievously injured. Vioxx is a fantastic example of that. Vioxx and heart defects and heart attacks and so on. So it's not like it doesn't happen. It's not very likely. If you look at the disturbing number of medications the average American takes, it is a wonder that it doesn't happen more often. So
it really kind of is.
Yeah. So it's not like it's happening all the time, but when it does happen, everybody knows it. So there's a frequency bias there you need to be wary of if you're in your own internal calculus, but it's still a thing to be concerned about. So the CDC and the FDA are not going to take very long if there's actually an issue to flag it as an issue if it's showing up above background frequency. So a lot of these adverse events are either associated with known causes from the vaccine or the fact that you're getting an injection. So, for instance, when people pass out, a lot of times it happens because that always happens. It's just that for some stupid reason we decided to televise a bunch of them recently. It could be that. It could be, the fact you get pain in your shoulder. That's going to be from either an injection, because it's intramuscular, directly into the deltoid muscle, or also the fact that you're causing mass inflammation with the injection site and the surrounding tissue due to the vaccine. Both of those kind of issues there, like you're not going to say, oh, well, shoulder pain is above background frequency, we should shut down the vaccine, because that's supposed to happen.
Right. Well,
but something like
that's part of the whole
CVST,
cost-benefit analysis thing, too.
Right. So the CVSTs are not supposed to happen. The TTS, so the blood clots with low platelets thing, so thrombosis with thrombocytopenia, that's and then ESSA syndrome. So that's not supposed to happen with the vaccine, any of the vaccines. Also, for the record, for the people who listened in and have had concern about this prior, the Janssen vaccine is the one that's based off the adenovirus modification, not the mRNA vaccines. mRNA vaccines, it's just lipid-encapsulated mRNA, which is endocytosed and then unfolded and used. So no viral vector is involved in the mRNA vaccines, just the Janssen vaccine. So, just so that's clear. That's basically what makes the Janssen vaccine, more, quote, traditional, even though
it is not a traditional...
Well, it is.
It is a traditional vaccine in the actual sense of it.
People have been getting the modified viral vector since, like, the 80s.
But it's like a traditional vaccine version 2.0, whereas the mRNA vaccine is legitimately different technology that should probably not be called a vaccine, because
it should be called a vaccine.
Well, it's one of those technical things. It technically deserves its own
The same
title.
way I would say technically it shouldn't be called gene therapy. Because it's
shouldn't.
not actually doing therapy on your genes. It's doing therapy with a gene.
Well, that is a little bit pedantic,
modifying
but
your DNA. So here's here's what I would say gene therapy is. It's when you modify the DNA of the patient so that you fix the genetic defect that they've had an issue with.
Or make any sort of change, that is to say.
Yeah, the mRNA is not making any changes because it fucking goes away and it never impacts the DNA whatsoever. That process does not go backwards in this sense.
Now, that said, again, playing the devil's advocate, you could put a rider on there.
Well, there's no mechanism for reversing it with the messenger RNA. It's not so you're not getting an injection with reverse transcriptase domains that would then exist outside of the nucleus.
Yeah, I guess that is to say, even anything it could create that was put on there as a rider is going to be a temporary effect.
So the only way that you could really make something more permanent is if you had a mechanism for getting into the nucleus to change the DNA that was included in the mRNA, that also included the ability to do reverse transcription on it, and included self-in. So it'd have to have the CRISPR-Cas9 mechanism embedded in it as well. It would be a very bulky setup. And it's not like with all that extra shit in there, you would kind of notice it if you're on the production line trying to make this stuff happen, because they make this by transcribing from DNA in host material. So you basically grow stuff that produces this coding in DNA, the complement coding in DNA. It gets transcribed and ejected from the cell, and they harvest it at the end when they've gotten basically a big enough bacterial mass or yeast mass or whatever they grow it in. They just basically blend it up and then extract the RNA from it. And it's possible to do that. And RNA is not a very stable molecule, so there's a massive loss in product when they do this, which continues on through to the end when they inject it into you. That's why they have to keep it so damn cold, because it's not a stable molecule. The DNA double helix is fairly stable, and it's only because it has that double helix structure with the complement attached to it. Without that, it kind of gets folded up in certain ways that it can stick to itself, and when it folds in the wrong way, and it'll break or it'll unravel. There's all kinds of stuff that wants to react with it hanging out in the cell. So that lipid carrier to get it into the cell is critical to getting it to the place where it's basically going to live the longest. Outside of the cell, it will be destroyed quickly as a free strand. So it doesn't even last that long inside the cell. It has to be being used in the Golgi body with the ribosome to not be degrading. You know, it's not like it has like a 5-second half-life. It has like a half-life of several hours, but it's not very long. So after a couple days, it's no longer going to be effectively producing that spike protein, and after a couple weeks, there's not going to be a strand of it left in you.
Oh, that's fair. So, yeah. I guess the thing to say here is, yes, it is possible that some of the things you're concerned about as far as the conspiracies related to this, they are theoretically possible. They are not really plausible, however, because there are regular human people that aren't cyborg lizards that work on these lines. And one or two of them would notice, like, hey, this is a crazy bulky protein that I'm putting in here. It'd be like if, a gig file rolled across your thing to update on a car's OS, where, it's normally 100K.
Here's the way I would put it. If you go on Amazon and you search for a 1 terabyte USB key and it costs $12, there's not a good chance it's going to be greater than 8 gigs. So the things that you're talking about, however, it is entirely possible that Amazon, by mistake, will send you a 1 terabyte USB key. Anyway, just, again, by mistake. It is far more likely for that to happen than for some of these farther out there adverse events.
Oh yeah, some of the wild shit absolutely is just wild shit.
It's not likely. Now, out of stress, out of body stress, for example, I would not recommend getting vaccinated for anything if you're pregnant, because body stress, like being sick, your immune system freaking out, can cause spontaneous abortion.
Yeah, just stay safe and take whatever vaccines, or not vaccine supplements, vitamin supplements are
Yeah,
necessary.
if you're
There's a
pregnant, wait
noted
until afterwards.
protocol that's out there that I would personally recommend taking if you're pregnant, as a non-doctor, as just
Yeah.
some random anon.
So I would say that yeah, you can worry about it, but I'd be no more worried about these vaccines in general if you're a healthy person who's looking to not get sick with something that could potentially last you the rest of your life because we don't know yet. Um, but if you're looking to just do risk management and you think you're going to go with the vaccine, I would worry about the vaccines no more so than if I stepped off of the edge of the sidewalk that the asphalt would suddenly turn into black tar and suck me into it. It just is not something that is that likely to happen.
I, however, would. But that being said,
That's because you're you.
maybe. But that being said, I
Or
would
you live next
still.
to a tar pit.
We all live next to tar pits in one way or another.
Well,
But
I'm not near La Brea, so I'm not worried about that or the volcano showing up in the middle of LA.
yeah, but you are in Florida, so you are surrounded by Florida.
Fair
So
enough.
there is
Well,
that.
come on. That was one of the better Tommy Lee Jones movies out there, all right? I liked it.
Oh, volcano?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean that was an excellent documentary. That happened, right? Like all of
Oh,
LA
man.
was burned up in a fire and volcano, or was that
Yeah, but
just
that didn't happen
some
until after
beautiful
some
fever
black
dream?
guy died up in Minnesota.
Oh wait, no, that wasn't LA. That was that place in Minnesota.
Oh, right. But it looked kind of just the same, though. It was covered in shit needles, right?
Yeah, and I mean there's a volcano going off somewhere. Maybe it was there, maybe it was somewhere else. I don't know. Has anybody protested that volcano for all the polluting it's doing? By the way,
Oh,
that
my
thing is
God.
pumping out so much pollution. I mean, can't I think the thing to really do would be for some of the really the people that want climate to unchange would be to really go there and protest that volcano in person, maybe
Oh,
on the
God,
land.
there's that one... It just reminded me of that one Robot Chicken episode with the fucking refrigerator. Oh no, his red light's blinking. Renew, renew, renew. So unchange the environment. It's renew the environment.
Indeed.
Just, just a bunch of protesters walking in with signs. Renew, renew.
I can see it now.
Then the lava flow comes by and they all die horribly. Oh no, that one's just burnt from the waist down.
Oh,
But they're hanging out right next to the lava pit, and oh no, the flow just went over their outstretched arms. Listen to the screams. You can't because their vocal cords have been shredded. Okay, well that's enough morbid humor.
Yeah, well, you have that.
Oh, there's never enough, but you know.
Well, speaking of morbid humor, this happened shortly after our last show last week.
See, never enough.
Oh no, absolutely. This is a little bit more the real though. The
Yeah.
Secretary of Homeland Security is doing an internal review to quote unquote address the threats of domestic violence
Oh,
extremism
yeah.
within the DHS.
Oh
So
man,
that's always fun.
that's a thing. That's stupid. There was something else that you definitely wanted to go over. What was it?
But I do have a piece of good news as well that I don't. It's kind of been lost in everything, but this actually happened. Oh, do I have a date on this? I want to say the 7th. No, 27th. What am I saying? The 27th. It might have been the 26th. But the Michael Jackson case that the lawyer had over the molestation.
Oh
thing
yeah,
got
that
tossed
fell
out,
through.
which honestly is pretty good. It was the ones that had done the, I believe it was Leaving Neverland, and that fell apart, which is excellent, honestly.
Yeah, it's
I
funny.
really think he was just a weird guy that kind of got a bad rap.
I was even just about to say, and then on the 25th, I have the wonderful phrasing, the glorious sound of me scrubbing my nuts.
Oh, there you go.
Perfect. I think I was talking about Twatter's... Yeah, there's Twatter's base. Okay, so there's the molecular sieve thing. Yeah, whoever that was, 3A should do good for water. I think it's 3A. I think it's It's normally the zeolite 3A.
Yeah,
But you
he.
just look up molecular sieve, 3A molecular sieves. I think you can find those for like I think it's like $5 a pound on eBay or something.
Oh well, there you
Actually,
go. I mean, that's not even. That's
they're not that expensive,
yeah.
and you can
That's
reuse them like crazy. You just bake them and they're good to go again. As
okay.
long as you
Well,
don't put them into something crazy,
well, there you go. If
they'll
you're
last for a
listening,
while.
yeah, go for it. You're not even looking at something that's even remotely cost prohibitive. So
Yeah.
absolutely.
So whenever a lab like does inventory and finds quote expired stuff, or they decide to PI retires, what have you, like this kind of stuff is the stuff that you just surplus and send out. Okay, so £5. Okay, it's a little more expensive than I thought. Well, no, it's not more expensive. Not really. It's $1 more. So here's £5 for $30.
Well, there you go.
HFS are molecular sieves, zeolite 3A. Yes, it's zeolites. So zeolite is basically, you can think of it like a extremely porous aluminum oxide or alumina. So even lighter than the stuff you get fire bricks made out of. Has way more holes in it.
Okay. Well, yeah. There you go.
So
Bigger. So is your
here
answer.
is a link to the eBay search. There you go.
And I'll have that included for you in the links below where you happen to be tuning into this.
Yeah, and they'll have different mesh sizes. You can pick and choose what you need. For instance, this one, I don't know why the hell it's this damn expensive, but it's 400 grams for $22, which
Whew.
is just way more expensive. And this one here is 10 pounds for $40. I think it's just the size of the bead.
I guess that would make sense.
Anyway, 3A I believe is the one you should go with. I think it's so if you wanted to do something really funny with it, one of the things you can do is dehydrate concentrated spirits. So you can make 200 proof alcohol with this stuff.
There you go.
So you should get it pretty well distilled first. If you're in a place where you can get grain, or you can get a moonshine, you can go from moonshine to basically pure alcohol. If it's got some flavor inside it, then that's probably not going to get sucked out. But you can use activated carbon and then get pretty much pure alcohol out of it.
That's pretty impressive.
Yep. And then you just put it right in the oven, bake it for a while at whatever temperature. There's plenty of guides for that. You can just go Google it. Bake it at whatever temperature for whatever the time is. You don't even have to step it like you have to do with magnesium sulfate, which is a huge pain in the ass to dehydrate, but so worth it when you're doing org-syn. Because you just go to like Publix or whatever and get yourself a giant ass bag of some salt, and it's mostly water. It's in the bag, but the little bit of actual salt that's left over when you're done baking the water out is so good at pulling water out of anything you make. But zeolite will do it for you too. I would say zeolite is even better than silica gel if you're doing fluid contacting. If you're not doing fluid contacting, if you're just trying to do a desiccation, I would still go with silica. It's just so much more effective. Silica or calcium chloride. Calcium chloride is also very effective. I would say sodium hydroxide, but calcium chloride is almost as effective as sodium hydroxide, and it also deliquesces just like sodium hydroxide, with the added benefit of not being highly corrosive. So, between the two of them, I go with the chloride, and you can find that stuff really cheap as a pool additive. You don't have to get the pure stuff; you just get the pool additive stuff, and that'll be good enough because it comes to you dried out. And that stuff, it'll be like 80 to 85% calcium chloride, and like the rest of it will be like calcium sulfate. Or,
No, you wouldn't you wouldn't have to worry about
something
something like that contaminating what you're working with, would you?
It depends. So if you're working with if you're trying to work with something sensitive, or you're trying to work with something that you don't want to have any salt contamination, you're not going to be distilling it, for example. Because if you do dry something, for instance, with magnesium sulfate, the recommendation basically is to then decant off the fluid and then to immediately distill it again, unless you're doing it for basic storage as an intermediate. But you're going to have some salvation and when you distill, it's not going to carry over. If you do not want that at all, if you're just going for decanting off for a final product and you're only worried about getting water out, I would just go with molecular sieve, or depending on the solvent you're dealing with, the silica gel can also kind of work. Silica gel is generally better for for the air contacting. So you're basically relying on vapor pressure taking it out over time. But it can work in some solvents. The worry is basically if you have too much water present, that the inrush of water will cause enough of a change in shape of the material that it will crack it and it'll shatter the silica gel. While it'll still perform its function, it'll still dry out the liquid. It won't do it quite as effectively. We're talking 99% efficiency relative to the basic mode of operation there. It'll get almost as good results, but you'll then have a bunch of shattered glass hanging out in the bottom of your stuff. And that's much more annoying to clean up because you have little tiny ass particulates. You have to use a filter instead of just decanting stuff off.
Yeah, I can imagine. That'd be a real son of a
bitch. Whereas so molecular sieves, they're made out of alumina, which is much stronger than silica glass.
Oh, for sure.
So it's very hard material, and it can withstand the inrush of the water. It doesn't really change shape very much. So all of the holes inside, like it's so porous on the inside, all the water that gets bound up inside there. Like I think it's what the porosity is. I think it's greater than 0.5. So it's 0 to 1. So basically the void fraction of the material is, I think it's greater than half, greater than 50%.
Oh wow! So yeah, there's not a lot of density there at all.
So it's very low density, and it's because it has all these little cavernous little pathways in there for water to get into. So if you actually watch the volume on something that you put this stuff into in a sealed container, you'll see the volume drop down by roughly, if you put enough of them in there, by roughly the amount of water that was present, assuming perfect mixing.
Interesting.
So ideal solutions.
Make for a hell of a whiskey stone.
Yeah. So ideal solutions are volume additive. That's why I said assuming ideal mixing. So a good example of non-volume additive ideal mixtures is acetone and water, because you add the two together and the volume shrinks.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
See, that's the thing that you don't do in chemistry, but you do in chemical engineering. Volume change of mixing is a thing.
Well, that's
and
really
for like, yeah, it can be a very significant value, like over 10%. It can be very significant.
Oh wow, yeah, that is actually pretty substantial.
So
and especially from an engineering standpoint, if you're trying to get something at the end of the day and you're trying to make it happen through some process,
yeah.
I mean, if you've got loss, that's extra loss you've got to deal with.
Well, that's a volume change. So you add acetone to water in a sufficient amount, and the volume contracts by some percentage from the sum volume that you're expecting. So you can actually end up with more product present in a volume than you expect by basic sum of volumes.
Oh, that's kind of wild.
Yeah, so you end up with more. Say I had 10 milliliters of a 10% mixture. It's weird how it works out, but there's a bunch of tens involved here. So as I did this myself to figure out what was going on with the unit op in undergrad lab. So I did power of 10 dilutions, serial dilutions, and you could see it was really funny how, as the concentration increased, how the volume of the solution just dipped down as you looked across.
Oh, that's fascinating.
So about 10% acetone and water by volume. So 1 milliliter of acetone and 9 mils of water gives you a bit over 9 mils of total solution.
Oh, that's wild.
Yeah.
Huh.
And then if you had 10 mils of that solution, you would have more than 1 mil of acetone present inside it.
Oh, wow,
at a 10% concentration.
Oh, that's peculiar, huh?
Yeah. So it's just, so it was funny because people were getting really fucked up results on a liquid extractor, and so the volumes were not coming out correctly, and I kind of pointed that one out. I said, well, you're mixing acetone and water, aren't they miscible? It's like, that's the whole point of the project, right? So I went ahead and just did it by hand when I was working in the lab as a half-assed TA, and it was like I said, it was really cool because I did power of 10 dilutions. I mixed up 10 mils, so I put 9 mils of water in, 1 mil of acetone. I had several vials with 9 mils of water in them. So I took 1 mil out of that one, put it into the next one, mixed it up, took 1 mil out of that, put it in the next one, and I had like 5 of those in a row. And it's just this wild curve where it just kind of, went over a little bit from where there was hardly anything in there, and it just rammed down at the end where there was 10% in there.
Huh. That's really
Again,
cool.
10 volume percent. So, okay, so
Not the kind of thing you'd expect. Huh.
yeah, it was interesting.
Huh.
I was able. It was. I knew there was something like that happening just from the data I collected when I did the experiment as an undergrad. What was really interesting was to be able to put a number on it.
Hmm.
So, and then to be able to characterize it and be able to give an equation that they could use to judge whether or not the students were above room temp IQ by the end. There was something else I think you wanted to talk about.
Oh, we got a couple things, but actually, you brought something up earlier, and
Sure.
they've finally said that you can breathe in droplets that have got COVID on them.
Oh yeah, that's right. I wanted to bitch about the WHO. These motherfuckers said it was not airborne over a year ago. I hate being right about this shit because it actually affects people's lives. But I'm also I was fucking right. Fuck these people. There's no fucking reason we should give them a single dollar more.
Oh,
Fuck
no,
them.
absolutely not.
Like they lied about first they waited on the data. They lied about saying they waited on the data. They lied about having it in the first place. Then it came out that they did, and they're saying, oh well, that wasn't our fault. Wait, well maybe it was, and then it turns out that no, they did that because China asked them to. These motherfuckers, they should not get a penny more. They should not get a single penny more. We should come up with a rival organization and fund that fucker and get shit done right.
Absolutely.
And furthermore, we shouldn't let any of these assholes from the CDC into it because they all showed up with their goddamn pants down for this pandemic. We're supposed to be the premier organization in the world. Supposed to be the best CDC in the world, the premier organization for this in the U.S. And we got caught with our fucking pants down after the fiasco of MERS, let alone SARS, let alone the fucking Hong Kong flu. Even Zika had a better response than this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. This,
the whole West Nile thing, way better response than this. They were out fogging mosquitoes. Nobody had to stay home from school. Shit was taken care of. This thing shuts down the country. Why? Because we let it. It wasn't even, forgiving even the part where we had politicians step in and fuck over things because Orange ran bad.
Well, you gotta remember, Nancy Pelosi did tell everybody to go down to Chinatown and ask for the nearest Chinaman to call.
Forgiving all that shit. Forgiving all that shit, we should have had this one in the bag. We should have been on top of it. We should have been able to take care of it. And we didn't because we allowed this shit to happen. We didn't cut off people from known places fast enough completely. We said, oh, well, you can come in. Then we let the CDC break its own guideline rules by not making these people quarantine for twice the known incubation time. Instead, they gave them 7 fucking days, which we now know is woefully insufficient.
Yeah, to say the least.
So, we let this happen at this point. We can confidently say we let this happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And by letting it happen, we open the door to allow these politicians to come in, beat the podium, and then tell you what to do.
Yeah, I mean, just look at what's happened with Gretchen Whitmer. I mean,
Whitmer's got her own shit going on now, right?
Yeah, I mean, she's had people already try and, do an operation to get her out of office, and, well, feds will be feds. We'll just say that about that particular operation. But even with that, the people are at such a point that they feel the need to either make that kind of theater or make those kind of saber rattles. So It's a bad
we knew
situation.
this thing was airborne before it got to the United States. We knew it was airborne based off the data that China couldn't hide because of all the videos coming out.
There's another point. Um, a lot of people have come to
The
think that
doctors, the
maybe
whistleblowers
this
said it
is
was airborne.
absolutely, yeah. Well, but the point I'm actually getting to here is
Yeah,
a lot of people in the conspiracy circles say that, well, this is all bullshit because, why haven't we seen the people dying and falling over in streets and all that shit
and
here?
shaking like they were in China. Yeah,
Well, there's actually a very reasonable answer for that. And it ties in with the fact that their vaccine is so shitty. So, they've got a vaccine that works not even as good as the Johnson and Johnson, like
it's
65%
no
at
better.
best.
It's no better than Chance. Their vaccine is it's 51%.
Absolutely. But
No better than Chance.
they've largely dealt with COVID. So the supposition
According to
here,
their according to the data they've released.
uh, that's that's absolutely fair. That's absolutely fair.
I gotta tell you, I can hold on. Let me pull this fucker up because it's just
And I don't
funnier
even.
every time I look at it. I'll pull up my little viewer.
I'd love to know the numbers of cell phones that are no longer in use because I
Oh
mean,
man, I haven't kept up with that since last year, and I should have.
but I mean the numbers were
Oh man,
really staggering.
that was insane.
The last I kept
Like
up with
part of
it,
it,
there were
a
about
small
30 million people that were not using their cell
yeah,
phones anymore.
it was interesting because a small part of it was legitimately users switching over to 5G,
Sure,
but
but it doesn't account for these numbers, and it
they
doesn't
were
account for.
included in the tables, and I added them in. And what happened? It was still like there's tens of millions of people that were suddenly no longer using phones.
Yeah, for whatever reason.
Like part of that was people use there's phone farms over there, but
Sure,
and so
but even
there's
still,
like
accounting for that, there's
well here's
only
the
so
thing
much
like
you can account for.
so here's the thing is at the most generous shit assumptions on that you're still looking at several million people at least that were died that were not involved like in the counting.
Well,
It
but
was
what I'm getting to here,
staggering.
yeah. So it seems like these deaths really did happen, and for those that are trying to say, well, it's not that bad over here, well, consider that just maybe China actually did largely contain those strains of COVID.
Sure.
And the vaccines that they developed are more tuned to those strains of COVID. Hence
Or it
being,
could be they also, you know,
yeah, they
it
could have
could
also
be that
just didn't shutty work, which is entirely possible too.
they could have also just been acting fucking weird.
That's possible as well. I mean, the thing is, we're looking at some kind of quantum mirror when we try and figure out the principles and prospects of the people that lead China.
All
All we
right,
can just
I'm gonna
say is
give you a
that,
couple of plots here.
yeah,
Now, this is the linear plot. So, I want you to consider this is just a linear. So, linear in the vertical. So, you know how I usually show it as a log plot.
sure.
So, it should not look that flat. As it just as a country that was supposedly that badly impacted, they quarantined a billion people almost.
They certainly did.
Like
By hook or by crook or by welded apartment
like
doors.
hard lockdown, quarantined. Here's the log linear plot.
Oh, by comparison to other nations?
No, this is just this is just the general plot. So the blue line is total case. The dark blue line is total cases. Light blue line is new cases. Dark red line is the red line is as total deaths. The green line is total recoveries. Purple line is total active cases.
So to break this down for anyone that's listening, because
The orange line and the yellow line are the two different case fatality rates. You'll see they settled in at about 5%. They should be at that. They should asymptotically converge to the same value, which is the mortality rate.
well, that makes sense because once you figured out all your efficacious treatment methods,
Well, so
you're basically
so
where you're going to be. And that's going
the
to
yellow
slowly
line
taper.
The yellow line is the total deaths divided by total cases. So unfortunately, that includes a lag because the deaths don't happen at the same time as the cases.
Sure.
Whereas the orange line is the concluded basis case fatality rate. So that is the deaths divided by deaths plus recoveries.
Well, but
So
to
that is going
describe
to
this for
tend to
people, the blue line, as you described, the blue line was the new infections, right?
the light blue line, the one that's squiggling around in the middle.
Yeah, that is rather random, as you would expect. I mean, it follows.
Yeah,
It's rather
there's
random
some
inside of
outbreaks.
its ranges.
Now
So
look at the scale of that. Look at the scale of that. It ranges from below 10 to maybe a couple hundred.
yeah. So
Bullshit. This is bullshit.
yeah, the numbers on this, it's kind of a how would you say? It's kind of too perfect, right?
It's so it was funny because the Chantards were going crazy about this stuff a while ago. Looking at the way things had happened, there are some people who did certain types of averaging early on with the numbers that were coming out of China. There was a way that you could average the data, which was totally reversible, and come out with basically a perfect quadratic early on. And they predicted like to within to within a couple of people the following several reports of total cases out of China.
Oh, I remember seeing that. There was
You remember
an
that
account
curve?
that was actually following that. That was like, this is the next number that they're going to report, and then
Yeah.
boom,
And then there was the
perfectly.
meme that came after that saying, "How many days has it been? 3, 4 days?" Yeah. With the whatever the number was. So
Yeah,
it's
China was reporting basically a perfect scientifically accurate curve or something for something else, basically.
it was like a 7-day average with a couple other factors into it as a moving average, and it when you reversed it back to do those when you made those averages and you pulled it in, it was a perfect fucking quadratic. I've got the picture of it buried way deep in my meme folder at this point.
Yeah, I do remember that. It was kind of ridiculous. Like
Yeah.
we
So
know for a fact that there were things happening above and beyond that they were not telling
yeah,
us.
they were fucking with the data hard. So here's the U.S. I'll give you the U.S. picture here, just the log linear. But I'll preface this with the U.S. made a change several months back now, which is really fucking annoying. With this one data source, and the other data source is no better because it's the reason why I swapped data sources. But basically, they decided to stop tracking recoveries, which I fucking beyond me why that was the case, because it was very useful before that. So basically, the
Well,
orange
there's the
line
problem. It's because it's very useful.
is no longer available. So there's no upper and lower bound on the CFR. There's only a lower bound on it for this plot. So the yellow line, and I added in the new deaths per day, which is the lighter red line. You'll be able to tell which one it is. So I took out the active cases, I took out the recoveries, I took out the upper bound on the CFR.
And these
So
are American numbers. Yeah,
this is the
US.
American numbers. Yeah.
Well, the comparison here is pretty stark. You know, you can see the one,
Yeah.
it looks very organic. The other is just
It's flat.
it's flat and weird.
Okay, now let me give you the linear plot, just to give you some perspective on why I use the log linear plot to describe the data. Basically, you can't see shit on that plot, right?
Yeah, pretty much not.
Yeah. So that's the reason why you use the log linear.
Fair enough.
Now, if you look at the linear plot, though, you can see the total cases, and you can see there's these kind of ripples in that. That's because we have several of these little Mount Stupids that occurred. The little humps in there, so
Yeah, all the
peaks.
solidarity suicides and all that.
Exactly. So now you'll see, actually, if you look at the log linear data for US, at the very end on the right side for the new cases, you'll see there's a little bit of an uptick that doesn't get very far, then goes down. That is what everyone was worried about, because if you look back one Mount Stupid beforehand, you'll see the same kind of uptick, And again, the bold lines for these plots are these 100 days radius smoothed curves with exponential radial basis function as the smoothing function. So basically, the further away you get from the point you're talking about, the less likely that point is to be able to impact the smoothing.
Sure.
But it goes out 100 points. Keep in mind, though, e to the minus 100 squared over whatever the normalizing factor I used was. I think it's like 2 pi. Like 100 e to the minus 100 squared is a very small number. So at 100 points out, you're hardly doing shit to the smoothing function.
Yeah, you've basically
You're basically zero.
you've passed the limit basically of effectiveness, or
so. But it is the radius is 100 points. So 100 points to either side. So 201 points total contribute to each point on the smooth line. You can see the about I think it's set at the 50% opacity behind the smooth line is the real data. That's much you can see it's much more noisy. And actually, I can just undo the smoothing, which will take a hot minute here.
Well, I get what you're saying. I mean, we're talking to listeners here, so you know.
I'll give you the unsmooth plot too, just so you can see it how noisy the data is. It's not as bad as you might suspect, but it is.
Well, I see what you're talking about here. You know, it's just basically turning something that's a lot more variable, which it's going to be because you're taking in data and letting it out. It looks. It's basically the comparison of like a.
You can clearly see the weakly bias that happens in here, the way that the ripples work.
Yeah, sure. You know, just if nothing else,
every week,
the nature of reporting.
Yeah.
So the smooth line is. I mean, this is all really kind of just esoteric for people that are listening anyway, and not super important to the details.
But the most important thing you can see also on there is that the gold line at the bottom basically doesn't change a whole lot with respect to the ripples or any of that stuff. It's fairly smooth in general.
Yeah, pretty standardized, pretty understandable, basically. Is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's not going to change much in terms of interpretation here. The CFR and the IFR are very different things. The CFR is the case fatality rate, which is based off of hard numbers from reported cases, which we know. The IFR is the infection fatality rate. That is going to be, if you know what it is actually, the true fatality rate at that point in time, which should converge with the CFR towards the mortality rate at infinite time. In theory, in a well-behaved scenario. In reality, they don't. But what you can do is say, okay, let's give a reasonable idea, let's give an optimistic, or let's give even a pessimistic lower bound for the IFR as a function of the CFR. Let's say that the CFR overestimates the IFR by a factor of 10, which it definitely won't. It won't.
Okay.
So, but we're going to say that it's overestimating by a factor of 10 because it's so much easier to just knock a zero off or whatever.
Sure.
The gold line is at about 2%. It's a little under 2%. But the gold line's basically 2%. That would mean the IFR, if say that it had stabilized and converged to some common value between the gold and orange lines, even though there's not orange on this plot for the U.S., but say they had converged by that endpoint here for today. It's around 2%, and a tenth of 2% is 0.2%. And say that's the infection fatality rate and the mortality rate. And then that's the end of it. Like, at the end of the pandemic, the mortality rate is definitely 0.2%. That's 2 out of every 1,000 people.
That is pretty substantial.
Which is, it doesn't sound like it's a whole lot, but it's a lot. There's 330 odd million people in this country. So, as soon as we knock 3 zeros off of that, we're now talking about multiples, many, thousands, millions of people here.
Yeah, a lot of people can't really appreciate the scale of this.
So 300 million people. We're talking about, let's just go back to 100 million people. We'll say a third of the country gets infected ever. So 100 million, knock off 3 zeros, 100,000, right? So 200,000 people. out of 100 million.
Yeah,
We could probably
that's
see how that's already
incredibly
happened.
substantial. Yeah. Now that's also dealing
That's
with
the
fucky numbers,
supposed.
but still.
Like I said, that is, as I said, the infection fatality rate is not going to be 10% of the CFR. It's not going to be 10% of the case fatality rate.
Right.
So we have 330 odd million people in this country, and we've already had over 500,000 deaths. That should tell you that the IFR is going to be greater than 0.2% by a lot, because we still haven't had a third of the country get infected yet.
That's fair.
So 2% is probably closer to the real value than we'd like to admit to ourselves.
Well, I guess take that as whatever advice you will to consider a vaccination.
So, by all means, also, I would not recommend just taking a random person on the internet's advice for getting yourself vaccinated. I think it's a personal safety issue and a personal health issue.
Yeah, talk to your doctor if you have one. And if you don't, just talk to someone genuinely knowledgeable about this stuff in your life.
I would recommend, if you have the ability to talk to your doctor before you get vaccinated, talk to your doctor before you get vaccinated and ask them, based on my medical history, is there anything I do not know, or anything I'm forgetting that would mean I shouldn't get the vaccine? The medical term is contraindicate. Is there anything that would contraindicate a vaccine?
And there are very real concerns.
Yeah, there are,
because these are brand new vaccines, and there is a material data and safety sheet on this that.
Well, regardless of even if you're going to get the Janssen, if I would say the same thing about the flu vaccine. If you don't routinely get it and you're going to get it this time around, I'd say the same exact thing. Most people who can't get a vaccine know about it already. Most people. A lot of people still don't, but might have stuff in their medical history that says they shouldn't get it. This is a very tiny minority of people. But statistics don't matter to the individual. So I always recommend go see your doctor and ask them, I want to get a vaccine, such and such vaccine, or I'm considering this vaccine for such and such reason. Is there anything in my medical history that you could point me to that would contraindicate this vaccine, or would mean I shouldn't get this vaccine? So a good example of this with the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, the fact that PEG is included. So some people have an allergy to polyethylene glycol or polyethylene oxide. Same thing.
Yeah, I understand a lot of people with food allergies can have specific issues there.
So this is one of those reasons to talk to your doctor. With the Janssen vaccine, obviously, you have some women who have some certain birth control issues or what have you.
Yeah. And I will say again, that is the only one I endorse. I would personally not endorse any of the others. Take that for what it's worth. And if you don't get vaccinated, that's actually fine by me as well. But
in the interest of just putting it out there to complete a perspective, if you will, I am now, as of today, 2 weeks out from my second dose of Pfizer, which I would otherwise not tell people because there's no fucking reason for me to tell people.
And there really isn't. It's like.
But I can tell you, right now, obviously I'm fine and all. Actually, I just got over a cold because my older brother and his kids came up. Because it's the funniest fucking thing. They didn't come up for Easter/Passover because the kids were sick, and they came up last weekend for delayed Easter/Passover because they're kids and you need to give them the holidays. They didn't come up. They came up last weekend, and the kids were coughing, and I was like, "Is anybody else gonna fucking notice this?" And so far as it's been, I'm the only one in the house who's gotten sick. So wearing a mask and all that shit, nobody else has gotten sick. And I'm just about over it now. So there's also that. It's fun stuff all around.
All right.
In any event,
I will throw my anecdote in here for anyone and everyone. Take baking soda every day. unless you're getting too much salt in your diet, because it performs functions in your immune system that are helpful. Not even a lot, just a pinch with every meal. Yeah, no, that's it.
Hold my breath. That's right.
Yeah, no
Each
worries.
their own. Do what works for you. But
I've had good results. I will say this though, the
don't
one
make so
thing.
many type 2 errors though.
No, I will say this though, but directly regarding baking soda, if you have a sore throat, it's an immediate fix.
That it will help. Gargling baking soda and water will help you with a sore throat.
Actually,
Absolutely.
even better than gargling, just take a little, just the tip of a spoon, drop it right on the back of your throat, and just let that swish around and coat the area.
Oh God.
It's going to be horrible. It's going to
Oh
taste like
God.
salty chalk, but
Okay, I know how it's getting better now. It's because it came immediately before it was worse.
there you go. Maybe that's a possibility as well.
Well, you see, I've also proven unintentionally before that I can't even remember the funny circumstance off the top of my head right now. I know I'll remember it and I'll tell you later. I've also single-handedly proven an axiom my dad would tell me all the time. If you have a headache, go hit your hand or something.
Oh, one
Or
of those kind
what
of
if
things.
if I broke your foot, it'll make your head feel better.
Sure.
I've single-handedly proved in a way that does not always work. And oh no, it was something. I'd hurt something, but I'd also just had like ear surgery, and they both really were not good.
Oh yeah, it's like if distract yourself
I
with
told my
pain.
dad,
Yeah.
that was it. That was it. I said, I was like, was it something else? I like hit something else. No, I like ran my toe into something. I said that was I hit my toe into the chair. It didn't make my ear feel any better.
No, it's like no. Now they just both hurt. It
Well,
only really works for the little pains.
well, it's true in some circumstances. Like if you've broken one bone and you break another one, the other one becomes the thing your brain focuses on. But
Yeah, but
not only
that's kind of a little different. You don't want to go just breaking your arm because you broke a
you'll end
leg.
up with no bones in your body. You'll end up with dust.
Yeah, you don't want that. You don't want dusty bones. That's the last thing you need.
Well,
And
Dusty Bones sounds like a title and a final note, unless you've got something else you want to talk about.
actually, yeah, I've got two things. Some.
Let's 10 minutes, wrap it up if we can.
All right, well then
I'll
let
try
you.
to shut up a little more.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Then we'll go with the one that's actually because we've had some good news, and this is actually kind of interesting good news, and it's
Just for the listeners, I do have something in the morning, and it's 12:20 right now.
yeah, it happens. So all right, yeah,
Yeah.
we'll call this the last one of the night then. So I was wanting to
Okay.
talk about how Florida and the border states
Oh
are
yeah.
doing great despite we're not going to count California because they for some magical reason are doing terribly
Oh, Newsom.
with their numbers.
They have a terrible case of Newsom.
Yeah, it is a gruesome case.
Yeah,
And of course
this is
Canada as well. So
I think this is the thing that I saw that you wanted to talk about.
yeah, this is the one I have wanted to talk on.
Yeah. This is also the one from last week. So Fauci is flabbergasted in his normal way that Florida and Texas are doing so well, and they dropped the mask mandate in Texas. And they didn't get the gigantic boom in cases they were expecting. Well, Fauci was expecting. It's the same way that when he was opining on how long the delay with the Janssen vaccine would take, without any fucking basis in fact to go on. I'd say the same exact thing was going on here. He was expecting the people in these states to act like a bunch of children and to go out and rub elbows and swap snot. And the fact is, it didn't happen.
No, people are largely being responsible where they should.
And you don't need to wear your mask from the moment you step out your door unless you're living in a fucking dorm. And even then, if there's nobody else around, it's very much likely that you're not going to have an exposure event by the time you get outside, unless the classes change right then and there. So, between that and kids being in a very safe location in most schools right now, they'll pass the common cold around, but it's not likely they're going to pass COVID around at this point, because most parents are also taking precautions. Now that said, by the time you notice an outbreak in a school, the whole school basically has to shut down. But that hasn't really happened in Florida. That's just hasn't.
Or in really any of the states that have
I
been
mean, if it's by luck or
light on
by
lockdowns.
not, by luck or intention, like the fact of the matter is, schools have been prepared to be safer. Schools are being run safer. The kids aren't really that comfortable, but at least they're at the school socializing, which is better than sitting at home on the computer
Yeah,
not socializing.
they desperately need this, and just a
Even with
few
a
of the
mask on,
studies that
it's
we've
better.
already gotten just for the past year's time are
So,
showing that these kids have lost out on a lot.
so we poured so much fucking money into schools to get them ready. And then a bunch of states let the school unions tell them no after pouring in all this money and paying these fuckers for not being at school for a year. That they let that happen is unconscionable. The fact that Florida didn't do that and put kids back in school where they belong, that was a big, big help for them. They are going to be a leg up on that. Because a lot of kids right now have lost out on more than a year of school. Being in school, socializing, being able to attend classes, go through the motions, and be there, present in school. And they need that a lot. It's socialization at a young age is huge. It's what allows you to figure out like who your friends are going to be. It's more than just being in class.
Well, to put it
In-person
lightly, we
presentation is
live
also
in a
much better.
society, and children have to learn that, if you'll pardon the pun.
Even with the way that they've watered down the socialization to the point where going out in the schoolyard is no longer is still fucking daycare. Even though that shit's happening, it's still light years better than only seeing your friends' faces on the computer with the teacher talking, and then having to figure out how the hell to do Skype or whatever with some other like 5-year-old. The kids that age are not going to socialize on their own using the internet.
It takes a particular kind of mind to function that way, and it's just not something that everyone has.
It's very few people that age are going to be routinely on the internet socializing with friends and doing stuff unless their parents are actively making that happen after they've already made the friend and said, "Mom, Dad, can I?"
Yeah.
That's largely going to be the impetus. If you have a parent who's just doing their own work at home, and then their kids doing their schoolwork at home, and their entire school experience is get on Zoom, watch the lesson, close the laptop, and then do their homework, they've lost out on a huge part of that part of their life.
Yeah, there's really a lot there. I mean, even as a person who hated school, and
It still educated you
it did,
in
it
certain
did, and
ways,
there are
one way or
things that
another.
I learned that are of value that I could not have learned without being in such a setting.
Good teachers or bad teachers, you still have to be near students.
You
And
absolutely do.
in-person lectures will always be better than virtual lectures at that age. Always.
Well, not only that, there are certain things that you can't convey without being in the room with someone,
Right.
and that's just the long and short of learning and teaching.
Yeah.
Having tried to pass on some knowledge to some others myself,
Right.
there's only so much you're going to get over a video screen, over a speaker,
Well,
without actually having
for
interaction.
instance, here's another thing. This is actually one of my major concerns when it came to more advanced education. As a person who's done lab instruction, plenty of lab instruction and course lecture and course grading, lab courses basically need to be in the lab. There's not much
Oh
you
yeah,
can
there's
do.
no way around that. I mean, that kind of
There's
learning
only so
has
much
to
like
take place
there's only
in
so
an
much
on-site
kitchen
situation.
chemistry.
Yeah.
There's only so much kitchen chemistry you can do, and that is no approximation or replacement for laboratory experience, which comes with all the safety training and stuff associated with it as well. Lab practices like taking notes as you're doing things can't be enforced. equipment is just not going to be necessarily available at home for a lot of people, let alone anyone in certain circumstances. Like most people aren't going to have a full distillation column at home for undergrad labs.
That said,
If you're
we
doing
are going to
chemical
try and
engineering.
work on a kitchen chemistry show because there's already been some interest expressed in that, and it's a really interesting topic. Yeah, yeah, at least two people,
Well,
and we've only
there's
got
a
6
couple of,
listeners, so that's like a third of them.
there's actually like well, let's see. There's some clock reactions that can be done that are fairly innocuous. So there's all kinds of stuff you can do in the kitchen. But yeah, sure, we can come up with some of those.
Yeah, some friendly stuff, we'll say.
Well, so there's some clock reactions which are really nifty. There's one called the stoplight reaction because it goes was a red, yellow, green.
Oh yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. There's a company that does home kits that sends one of those out for like educating kids and teens.
And there's was it Briggs Roush? I can't remember the name of it. There's the BZ reaction, which is it's a clock reaction that you can do as a homogeneous mix, but it's way cooler if you just get the mixture just right so it doesn't bubble, and you pour it out into a petri dish and just let it go, because it's a reaction diffusion system, and it just is wild looking. There's the standard iodine clock. That one's fun. That's the one with the iodine and the starch where it goes white, black, white, black, white, black. There's several other iodine clocks in the same kind of basis. There's some that go like orange, black. But yeah, there's all kinds of really cool chemistry you can do in the kitchen relatively safely. And there's a lot of these you can actually do to the in such a way that you can pour them down the drain at the end, which is, I think, actually my favorite part of being able to do kitchen chemistry is just the toxic or hazardous waste issue can be completely mitigated.
Yeah, that's another thing that has to be remembered about any kind of DIY or kitchen chemistry kind of stuff. You've got to dispose of these things, and that's something that we'll have to make a point of touching on when we get to this, is proper safety and disposal.
Yeah, all the fun stuff, all the more exotic fun stuff I've done at home is part of taking my work home with me. In some cases, which may or may not have been advisable. All of that comes with a price, and that price was always making sure that it was safely disposed of. So anything that is truly truly indisposable, or non-disposable, as like truly hazardous substances, have to be taken to a proper waste disposal center, and they do exist. You can find them usually outside of town. You can just look up like hazardous waste disposal in your area, and you'll find some places. You have to have a good idea of what's inside, because a lot of places will not take unknown substances. Pretty much, period. And they may or may not have questions for you if you're dropping off something particularly nasty. One of the great ones is if you ever done any mercury chemistry, you usually end up with a bunch of mercury sulfide, which you can just throw out in the garbage. But say you don't, and you end up with something really nasty, that's still a mercury compound, you're probably going to have some questions. If you just want to get rid of liquid mercury, usually that's not a problem. They'll just take it. But like if you have like methyl mercury or something like that hanging out, or mercury chloride, they're not going to be happy unless you've got a note from a specific lab. So that kind of stuff you'd want to turn back into the stuff that's more acceptable. But a lot of things you can basically, a lot of the organic substances are usually great, unless you're talking about something more energetic. But you can usually just dissolve them in piranha acid and be done with it. It just takes a while, and a lot of peroxide. So boiling piranha acid solves most of your problems. Or acid and base washes; those are really good.
So, yeah, that'll be useful to go over. Yeah, I'll actually put that in the notes.
Not getting too far in the weeds.
But that's pretty much most of what I was wanting to go over, and we've had a less bad week than.
Yeah. Motherfucker! If you want to get in the show, then you fucking show up. Sorry, he's sitting there saying, you guys need another topic. COVID is so 2020, the dumbs won.
Oh, Jesus.
Steve, you dick.
You could have been here. You could have been a contender, Steve. But you
You
had to.
could have gotten that shit out of your system on air.
But he missed the opportunity. Well, hopefully he'll listen and he'll be able to make it up. Anyway,
Yep.
it's been an absolute pleasure. Look up Craig basically everywhere at CraigBob99. Look me up at that fake guy Dan. I'm Evan. He's Craig. I'm not that fake guy Dan. I am, but you know the Dan part's fake. Hence the whole fake thing. And the podcast
This is the fake podcast.
Yeah, it is. It's a fake Untitled podcast. Look for it everywhere. And there will be some kind of streaming soon, but otherwise, we did get a question, and we even addressed it. So, you know we're good for it. So hit us up. Anyway, we'll talk to you soon. Be good, people.